The year was around 2012 when I got a call from my friend Max saying that a convicted murderer had just been transferred to a nearby prison where he would remain until his death penalty was carried out. It was a hideous crime, but like every other criminal, he insisted that he was innocent, saying that the Mountain Devil was the one behind all of it. Max suggested that I come over and write an article about this event. So Max arranged the time for me to go meet the criminal, whose name was Roger. When he and I first met, my impression of him was quite different. Something about him drew my interest, so I listened to what he had to say. He appeared to be very worn out, and I felt compelled to help him. Perhaps I could save him from certain death. Roger went on and on about his story, a story filled with horror. He began from the very beginning, explaining what happened on that tragic day. Roger said that he was a mine worker, working on a project near the Mexican border. Roger was part of a 5-man crew, whose job was to dig tunnels to expand the mine. Their mission for the day was to find more iron ore and transfer it to the outside of the mine by the end of the day. There were many other groups of miners in the tunnels. It was on this day that Roger's team was tasked with the responsibility of exploring new caves and new mine tunnels. The inside was pitch black, and the workers had only small flashlights to find their way around. The work was dangerous, so they sent robots in to assess the conditions of the mine. They soon discovered that the walls on the tunnels were too hard, made of stone, and therefore Roger decided that they needed to find a new way to dig. Otherwise, it would take them too long to complete their task. Upon further inspection, they noticed that one of the nearby walls where they were digging was different, soft, not dry like the other walls inside. They all decided to use shovels, picks, whatever they could use, as all the workers began moving more and more soil from this area. And that's where this whole grisly story began to take shape. In that very instance, a wall inside the cave collapsed, and then they could see another extremely large cave behind it. Everyone seemed to be amused and excited about their new discovery. But as they hurriedly ran closer to get a better look, they found many animal carcasses, dead bones, and insects all around. The air was stuffy and moist, with a stench of death. Suddenly, a series of hideous screams were heard coming from beneath all areas of the mine. In that moment of terror and confusion, people began panicking, trying to find a way out. But in their desperation, they got turned around, disoriented and lost. And with so many other tunnels, they couldn't figure out which direction would lead them out of the mine. Roger pulled one of the other workers aside and asked him to make a signal for the other members of his team to follow. When suddenly, he lost sight of Karim, and then 2 other people from the group disappeared. When Roger turned around, he could only see Nolan running towards him, out of breath and looking very pale. As they continued running a while longer, Roger suddenly saw a light at the end of the cave, believing that it might be a way out. The screams were getting closer and louder, and they echoed throughout the entire cave structure. But as they continued to search for the light that they believed would lead them out of the tunnel, Roger suddenly realized that the light was a deception caused by the creature to draw us closer. And as everyone continued running, a monstrous creature appeared right before their eyes, suddenly showing its sharp teeth. It had 4 long legs. Each foot came with razor-sharp nails and claws, and with a long, whipping tail. Roger and his friend were running for their lives, frightened and screaming for help, but the beast continued chasing after them. They knew they couldn't give up, with Roger's friend following close behind. He stumbled and fell to the ground, being instantly grabbed by the monster, killing him at once. and all Roger could do was watch as his friend was being ravenously torn apart by this hideous monster. The only thing Roger could do now was run for his life as fast as he could. When all of a sudden, Roger heard a loud call. Looking back, it was Karim, his face covered in blood, and his head had been sliced open with a sharp rock. Karim explained that he was being chased by this monster, and somehow, by the grace of God, he narrowly escaped. However, his leg was seriously injured. They were determined to save their lives. They had to get out of there. Just as Roger was about to speak, Karim put his hand over Roger's mouth, instructing him to be quiet. He realized that the monster was nearby, sniffing around, looking for them. Roger knew the only way out was on the front side of the mine. But the monster was too close, and Roger had to create some kind of a decoy to try to distract the monster and make their escape. Then, Roger remembered that he still had that robot in his backpack. Roger began to remove it from his backpack ever so quietly and put his plan into action. It worked. The beast, being distracted by the robot, began chasing it. But it was so fast that when he caught up to it, he realized that it was only a trick and turned around and saw Roger and Karim as the beast began its deadly death march. The beast was screaming and running after them, and Roger knew his only chance of escape was to beat that cellar door open so that he could escape. But as he continued pounding on the cellar door with the shovel, it caused a landslide. Roger, having escaped just a few steps ahead of his friend, the rocks began to tumble down like an avalanche, burying his friend behind him. Finally, in that moment of panic, Roger ran straight out to find some workers nearby to help him. After sitting down and talking with Roger for quite a long time, something about his appearance piqued my interest. I could see by the sweat running down his forehead and face, trembling with his words. I began to believe that there was more to this story. Sometime later, I met with Max and I asked him for more information about the case. Max told me that there was a camera that recorded Roger and Karim running out of the cave together, and it showed a scene of Roger pushing Karim back into the cave. With this kind of evidence, it's almost impossible to exonerate what could turn out to be an innocent man. Everyone was accusing Roger of causing the landslide with the shovel, causing the barrier to break and collapse, killing his friend. The bodies of the rest of the dead workers were pulled out by the rescue team, but there was no evidence of any monster being described. The police, following the evidence, presumed that Roger must have killed all the other people. Were these the rants of a madman trying to save himself from the inevitability of a death sentence for a crime that he may not have committed? Or were these just the words of an unstable witness, as the police described in their records? So what really did happen that day? I can tell you one thing for certain, that not only the villagers, but Roger himself believed in what he was telling me. Was this evidence built upon some kind of trick photography? Was there a police cover-up? Did someone else commit the crime that conveniently fell onto the shoulders of the accused? I believe there's much more to this story. And as an investigative reporter, I have seen my share of things that I cannot explain. And as I lie in bed at night, thinking of these things, was this a real case? Or was this some kind of undiscovered, mutated creature from the bowels of this earth, unknown to science? Or was it just a hallucination?